It's podcast, man.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Football Goons podcast. Fresh off Christmas vacation hangover and fantasy football championship week. We're here back live with you again this week. Hopefully you had a wonderful time with your family and friends and you're celebrating a championship or two, this week. We realize that there's a handful of folks that are still playing this week as well. So, we don't want to diminish that, but we realize that the majority of leagues have finished up. So we want to kind of take a look back a little bit at this past fantasy season and also look ahead to the NFL playoffs a little bit here. And before we do that, I'm going to give us a chance to maybe gloat. I mean, I think for two of us, it's not going to be as fun. But let's talk about just a quick recap. Any fantasy championships amongst the group here?
This will be quick. I have no gloating. I lost both of my championship games. I was ahead going into the 4:00 games, and I lost both of them in the late games. So I am pissed at fantasy this year, and I'm just going to be honest with you.
Yeah, I had a magical season this weekend. I had a magical weekend. I was able to take home our shared league, where the four goons make up half of the league. I was able to win that league for the first time since 2011, the fifth time overall in 18 years as a league. So I was very excited about that. I left these two in the dust. I beat Deal in the semifinals. Very frequent listener, Will, was my opponent in the championship. He and I were the top two scoring teams of the league. He was actually number one. The bad news for him is he was not number one week 16, as I put up 237 on him in the championship.
Wow.
Dominant performance. And the funny thing was, I even joked with you guys, like, I'll take the championship. I'm thrilled to death. I've never had a team in 18 years that I hated more than I hated this team. Like, it was a really good team, but I was built on pass catchers. My receivers and tight ends, I would put up against probably any fantasy team in America, but I was not running back heavy.
Yeah.
And that's very unlike me. So it was strange. I know I'm talking a lot here, but I did have a personal, I now have, Rock will be happy about this. Sam Bradford will go down in infamy.
Sam Darnold.
I'm sorry. Jesus, not Sam Bradford. Sam Bradford is never good to be involved. Sam Darnold will always have a special place in my heart, as I rode that season on Matt Ryan early in the year to go with Andrew Luck, and then I traded Matt Ryan for Carson Wentz to go with Andrew Luck in a 2-quarterback league. Wentz went down, and I went with Sam Darnold in the championship game, and he responded with 37 fantasy points. So that guy, he is my guy for a good now. I love Sam Darnold.
If you pay attention to footballgoons.com, I did goon Sam Darnold last week.
Yep.
No big deal. He just finished as like number 6 quarterback.
That's all. No big deal.
So I was
fun times.
I was 0 for 1 in championship games. Finished 5th in our league, which obviously sucks. But second in my pro league. Was hoping for that cash out for first place, but alas, tight ends did me in, because all I needed was 6 fantasy points from Jared Cook, and he went ahead and gave me 3.
Which, based on this season, was not a lot to ask out of Jared Cook.
No. Nope.
Just have a below average game for yourself.
4 catches, 40 yards.
That's it.
Like that's like, I don't know. That's like a half for him typically.
Crazy.
I don't know. But it was nuts. And unlike you, I loved that team to death. I'm sad that I'll never have that team again. So, it is what it is, though. So, second place, I'll take the silver medal. I wish that I didn't have the ding in my ranking. I wanted to try and get up toward that platinum, but wasn't for me.
There you go.
All right, let's talk some trivia here. We like to start off the shows with a little bit of trivia. Hopefully you're playing along with us on YouTube, or, if you're listening after the fact as well, you can still play along and try and get them too. We're going to do this kind of like last week, where it's an elimination style question, where there'll be a variety of answers. And as we get them right, we'll knock them off, except we're not going to eliminate any players, because Deal is sick and not with us tonight, obviously. So we've only got 2 contestants, and if we start knocking them off, that's not going to be a lot of fun. So So let's get it going here. The theme is based off of last weekend and record-breaking seasons, basically.
Okay.
So obviously last week we had a new record set for running back receptions in a season. So that's kind of a giveaway. And by virtue of random coin flip, while Miles was talking, Miles is going to get to go first in the first category. So he might have a gimme here. But I'm looking for, since 2000, they're the running back receptions leaders in a season. All right. So there's not the top 9 I have here. So since the year 2000, you give me a name and I'll let you know if you got it correct and got a point.
I'm going to start off with Matt Forte.
Matt Forte is correct. He's number 2 on the list. Had 102 catches in 2014.
Are we or are we not counting this season?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, so Christian McCaffrey.
Christian McCaffrey is number 1 on the list with 106 currently with a week to go. 2018.
How about LaDainian Tomlinson?
LaDainian Tomlinson's number 3 on the list. He had 100 catches in 2003.
Wow. See, this is where it starts to get tough. Those first 3 are kind of easy. I'm going to throw one out at you. I'll go back to the early 2000s. Is Marshall Faulk on the list?
Ooh, Marshall Faulk is not on the list. Chance for Miles to steal a point here.
Oh boy, excited. How about, let's go with Alvin Kamara from last year.
Alvin Kamara did not creep up there. I'll give you this hint. The lowest number on this list since 2000 is 87 catches.
What did he? I think he had like 81.
Yeah. So everybody on this list is going to be 87 or above. And it's really spread out. So it's going to be tough. So we're going to do like a 3-strike rule here. So once you guys each have 3, we'll cut the points at that, and then I'll reveal. So Rock.
This is really racking my brain. Edgerrin James.
Edgerrin James is not on the list. That's a 2nd strike for you. This one's a tough one. The next one's going to be pretty easy.
How about Duke Johnson?
Duke Johnson is not.
Oh no.
On the list. 2 strikes each.
Oh.
If it makes you feel any better, our guy King Reed is playing along right now on YouTube. And the last 2 that you guys have guessed, he guessed as well. So.
I was going to say he's probably crushing us because we're not allowed to cheat.
Oh.
I'm going to give you guys a hint, okay?
Yeah,
there's 1 each from each of your favorite teams. Rocco's is going to be a little tougher.
All right. I got mine for sure. But it's not my turn, right?
No.
Okay.
Oh, jeez. All right, so I'm going to steal yours because I think it's more obvious. Brian Westbrook.
Brian Westbrook. He had 90 catches in 2007.
And that was previous. That was the Eagles' previous franchise record until Zach Ertz broke it earlier this year.
That's correct.
Jeez, now that's dirty that he gave us 1 from each of our teams, and you're going to cheat and take mine. I'm not real happy about it. Any chance I can get like Duke Johnson again? Are they obvious, like running back answers? Like, is it receiving running backs or like good players?
One of them is just an outright good player, and then, 2 of them are outright really good players, and 2 of them are very clear. Like, actually, 3 of them are very clear, like they're in there to catch the ball.
Okay.
I have 2 strikes. How many does Miles have?
2.
Oh,
I
yes.
have 2 as well.
Because I think I have another answer.
That's dirtbag because you stole mine. I'm going to try to steal Rocco's, and I'm going to go with Leon Washington.
Leon was not. That's the 3rd strike for Miles.
I will just happily pick up the Richie Anderson.
Richie Anderson.
That's
89 catches in 2000. So, Rock, you can go until you get that 3rd strike.
It's going to come right now because Tiki Barber.
Tiki Barber is not one.
Okay.
All right, so we got a 3-2 lead here. You guys had 5 correct. You missed Charlie Garner, 91 catches in 2002.
Oh, Reggie Bush has to be one.
Reggie Bush had 88 in 2006. Steven Jackson had 90 in 2006. Yes. And Saquon Barkley has 87.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So
So
I climbed that list more than likely.
yeah. So
Cool.
all right, so we got 3-2 Rock. We're going to follow the theme here and go with tight ends now, since we have a new leader in the clubhouse here. We're going to go with the top 6 players receptions in a season. And the reason I went with top 6 is because there are a couple guys on here that are on the top 10 list a couple times, and I wanted to keep it in the Super Bowl era.
So these are top 6 Super Bowl era one time each.
Yes.
Okay.
Only one time, or like?
I mean, some of their names might appear in the top 10.
Oh, okay.
That might be a repeat,
okay.
but there's 6 guys.
All right.
So, Rock, you get to go first this time.
Oh, Zach Ertz.
Don't steal mine when there are obvious.
Zach Ertz currently 113.
I should get a bonus point for saying Jason Whitman.
Jason Whitman is correct. He was on the list twice.
For the listening audience, we do know it's Jason Witten.
Yes.
That's a South inside joke with his wife there.
So he was on the list twice. He had 110 catches in 2012, and he had 96 catches in 2007.
Tony G.
Tony Gonzalez is correct. He was on the list twice. He had 102 catches in 2004 and 96 in 2008.
There's got to be a Gronk season on there.
There is no Gronk season.
Oh, man. So just yards and touchdowns for him, huh?
Right.
Jeez Louise.
I'll tell you this. There's probably one more, like, pretty slam dunk.
Antonio Gates.
Antonio Gates is not.
Ooh.
All right. Super Bowl era.
Yep.
I'm gonna go with Shannon Sharp.
Shannon Sharp is not.
Jeez, this is
No.
terrible.
I'm just telling you, this is a tougher one. So
Dallas Clark.
Dallas Clark, 100 catches in 2009. We got 2 left and a strike each. One of them, obviously, here is a little more recent. One is back to grade school for us.
Grade school? Oh, my God.
So the 80s or the 90s?
90s.
I was actually thinking before that, and I was so set on a player from before that. What's the minimum number here, Sal?
The lowest is 96.
96. Okay. I feel like I'm doing the spelling bee. Just like, what's the origin here? Can you help me out with the origin?
I'll help you along because it goes quicker with only 2 guys. You don't have more time to think.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, what are you helping me along with? I thought I was about to get a clue.
Well, I told you one was more recent.
Oh,
That's
not as helpful as you thought.
I need Miles to guess and get strikes because I know I have one and I think I have both.
Wow,
Word.
tight ends. I'm going to say Jimmy Graham.
Jimmy Graham is correct.
Wow, I can't believe Jimmy Graham and not Gronk or Antonio Gates.
He had 99 catches in 2011.
Wow.
So there's one left.
Ben Coates.
Ben Coates of the Patriots. 1994 season had 96 catches.
I forgot he was even a person.
All right, so here's what we're doing for the last round here. What I'll do is I'm going to give, because it's 7-4 in favor of Rocco right now. So let's say closest without going over on this one is going to get 5 points.
Oh, jeez.
All right. How many different running backs have caught 85 plus balls in a season in NFL history?
Who's going first?
Well, I will let you go first since you are behind. So closest without going over. How many different running backs have caught 85 plus balls in a season? This is all Super Bowl era. So basically, before then, they really weren't tracking these things.
I'll say 19.
I'm going to play it safe and go way under that and say I'm going to say 12.
All right. Well, King Reed said 22 on Twitter. I'll let you know that King Reed was too high. I'll let you know that Miles is going to want to kick himself because it was 18. So Rocco is the winner this week of our Goons trivia out of the top here. So all that in relation to the fact that obviously Christian McCaffrey, now the leader in running back catches in a single season, and Zach Ertz, tight ends, catches in a single season. So a little fun there.
Now I'm going to be right if Josh Adams gets like 72 catches this week, right?
If he does, we will go back in time.
Will let me win this week.
And we will give
retroactively let you win.
Yeah.
Good trivia, Sal. Nice work.
All right, so let's take a quick second here and talk about our friends at Gorb. That's GHORBH. For those of you that don't know, haven't been following along with the show. Really, what it's all about is get hungry or be hungry is their theme, and it's about finding what fuels you, what you're passionate about, what you want to go for, and just going for it 100%, so that you don't wish in the future that you would have gotten hungry. So it's a great reminder for us all every day in our everyday lives, whatever we're doing. You can check them out at gorb.com, GHORBH.com. They've got all kinds of great gear, hats, t-shirts, sweatshirts, personal favorite sweatshirts for this time of the year, with the message on there to give you that reminder that in life, you've only got two choices. You can either get hungry or be hungry. All right, it's time for a little bit of 2018 fantasy review. Listen, we're not going to go nuts with this because we'll have a couple more weeks to kind of dive into some of this stuff, but this is like an instant react kind of touch here. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, who was the single biggest pleasant surprise this year in fantasy football and why?
I feel like it was only right for me to cheat the question as I tend to do.
Yeah, you like to do that.
I don't follow your stupid rules. So
Thanks.
You very clearly said single biggest, both on podcast and in the agenda. And I did not go single. For me, it was that this season, more than any that I can remember clearly, the studs came through. Mostly the studs came through. QB was sort of a mess, but the way fantasy's heading, most people with a sane mind did not go crazy with quarterback early. Like, you didn't bank your season on Aaron Rodgers.
Sure.
You didn't bank your season on Tom Brady, but the top 10 running backs as we stand right now, which I'm going to consider the finish because I don't believe in Week 17 fantasy, only included two guys in James Conner and James White that weren't expected to finish top 10-ish. And by top 10-ish, I mean, if you go into a season and say, hey, this guy's ranked 14 and you can't see him being top 10, what are you doing? So James Conner, James White, the only guys in half PPR that you didn't expect. And then receiver, the same can be said with only Juju, which a lot of us could have seen that happening. And Robert Woods, I think most people would not have said had top 10 potential. But 8 out of the top 10 receivers, 8 out of the top 10 running backs were guys that on draft day you drafted with that expectation. And I thought that was a welcome change from usual.
And just to agree with you even further, if the fantasy world had known that Lev Bell was not going to play all year, Connor would have been much higher.
Yeah, and maybe not draft the top 10, but you wouldn't have been jaw on the floor if I told you to spend.
No, not at all. Not at all. My biggest pleasant surprise, and actually, I broke the rules too, South here. I'm sorry, but
oh my gosh, why do we even have rules?
my biggest surprise has to go along with some stats that I was sending the other night. 19 different wide receivers are currently at 1,000 yards, and a couple more could get there this week. We can have over 20 different receivers with 1,000 yards, which is awesome if you're in a deeper league and need to draft, multiple receivers, more than two. We have a league where we play 3 wide receivers. It's almost making it so that you can draft 3,000-yard receivers on your team, and it's not a stretch. But it even more shows why we need to be thinking running backs, because only 9 running backs are currently at 1,000, and really that's probably where it's going to wind up, unless a couple of guys have huge week 17s, like 150-yard performances. So, you're really taking a chance with the running backs, whereas the receivers are there to be had. So that was my biggest surprise in a pleasant way.
For sure. Look, I followed the rules because I made the rules and I like to follow them. I went with Philip Lindsay, and I love these stories of these guys who kind of come out of nowhere, and they become a big deal, and no one had any idea. This is a guy who, quite frankly, probably carried a lot of teams for a while when we started to have some running back injuries and things like that were happening. Everybody was on the Royce Freeman bandwagon preseason. Philip Lindsay had an opportunity early on. He had 29 carries in the first 2 games. There was a game where he had like 8 yards per carry against Oakland early on. Didn't end up really taking that role on all the way until like week 5 or so. But look, this is a guy who showed that even in limited usage this season, he could be a superstar. He's a good player. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can make it happen in the passing game. He's a good pass protector. He's a good runner. He's just one of those building block type guys that we're going to be talking about for the next couple of years, who really kind of came out of nowhere. And after a while of not really having that in Denver, it's kind of refreshing to see again that they're going to have a super fantasy relevant back for a while to come here. They were a factory of fantasy running backs for a long time. Yeah. So, I mean, I just enjoy that aspect of it. Obviously he got hurt, so he's going to have a little bit of a recovery here in the off season, but like, what's not to like about this guy? Like, he scores touchdowns for you when you give him enough carries. He runs for, there's at least 6 games that I saw on his stat sheet this morning when I was looking at this, where he ran for 7 yards per carry or more in a game.
Wow.
And all of those games, coincidentally, were his most carries of the season. So when you give him a chance and let him get going, he's really, really good. He could be really special. And he still lives with his parents. So it's one of those good stories that like we could be talking about for a while. So I've really appreciated that. I think he's going to be a big deal next year.
Go ahead, Ross.
Well, do you think that his emergence and the great season he had, you think there's a chance we see Royce Freeman moved on draft day?
I think if the return is right, why not? I mean, what is Royce Freeman, other than maybe some pedigree, what has he really done to make you not feel like Philip Lindsay's the guy in that situation for them?
I just think I think it could be a perfect marriage between, like, Denver wasn't the only team that wanted to draft Royce Freeman.
No.
So, and we're only 1 year removed from both of these guys coming in the league. So if you're a team that liked Royce and you could say, hey, listen, we'll throw you a 4th for the guy you thought was going to be your guy, but you found somebody else you like more. You clearly like him more. You still have Devontae Booker to spell him. Let us give you a 4th round pick and see if we can make Royce Freeman work.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're like, if you're Tampa Bay, why are you not calling? You know what I mean? You could put Peyton Barber out to pasture. You could put the ghost of Jacquizz Rodgers into retirement.
Yeah, and let Rojo and Royce take over the backfield.
Yeah, because that's another situation where, like, you don't really know what you have in Rojo. So it's a good fit. It's a good idea. It's just a name or a team that comes off the top of my head that I feel like is still looking for back. So
to go along with that, I don't think I don't think anybody should look at this season as from Royce Freeman and say that like, oh well, he couldn't get it done. He's a disappointment. A lot of teams missed out on Lindsey like that. Yeah. Like every single team missed out on Lindsey every single time they drafted, including Denver.
All of them 7 times at least.
Exactly. So I don't think it's so much that they're out on Royce as much as Lindsey really impressed. Lindsey was going to be one of my answers if I went with a single guy. I will give a shout out to Chris Carson, who had an amazing season, first 1,000-yard back in Seattle since Marshawn Lynch. And really one of the reasons why I think they were able to be so competitive this year and make the playoffs. Because I know myself going in, I don't remember where the rest of us had them, but I don't think we thought that Seattle was a very good roster going into this season. I know personally that, and I'll eat crow for this. I know personally I had them down, in the top 10 picking. I think even in the top 5. So the emergence of a feature back like Chris Carson, who can really take on the load, to pair with the other guys who are very impressive in the running game in their own right. Penny and Mike Davis had a couple of good weeks. I saw a stat during the game the other night that they're the only team in history that has 1,000-yard rusher and then at least 3 other guys with 400.
Oh wow!
So they're impressive all around. But I didn't go that route. I went the route I did because I don't like following South's rules.
So you break the rules and then you give 2 answers. Cool. All right. What was the single biggest disappointment in 2018 fantasy and why?
That's Rob Gronkowski. Again and again and again and again and again and again and again. He was once again tight end 1 in drafts. I personally did not have him ranked tight end 1, but I can be sold on it. I mean, I think early in the year as a group we talked about, Ertz has got to be 1 or Kelsey's got to be 1, and I even said it's Gronk until he proves me otherwise on like FanDuel, single week. I didn't have him 1 because of injuries, but he was drafted not only as tight end 1, his ADP, according to Fantasy Pros, was 21st overall in standard and 22nd overall in half PPR. So you're talking about end of second in 12-team leagues, beginning of third in 10 or 18 leagues. And he's 10th at tight end.
Yeah.
And not because, like, if you tell me you're 10th at quarterback this year, that's a good year because a lot of quarterbacks really blossomed. Patrick Mahomes might be your MVP. Guys are coming out and being way more than we expected. Tight end was a cesspool all year, and Rob Gronkowski's still only 10th. He's only 0.8 of a point ahead of O.J. Howard, who hasn't played since week 11.
Yeah.
And so there are teams out there, and Deal talked the other week about how bad teams are doing that base their draft around quarterback. And first team to draft a quarterback is 8th place or 10th place or whatever. This just preaches to you can't build your team around a tight end. It's just not a position where you're very consistent ever, especially not with injury-prone and getting older Gronk. He was not a disappointment to me because I have not touched Gronk in years. But as a fantasy community, we have to stop with Gronk. It's time. He's dominant, but it's time to let it go.
I almost went Gronk, and mid-season I said that at that point he was the most disappointing for me, but something really registered with me today looking at 2 different guys. And that's why I went with Matthew Stafford. It worked out for me that I didn't get him, but my plan in a lot of leagues was to be the guy who settled for Matthew Stafford late, just fill up the stat sheet with a bunch of ugly games, but like get a ton of fantasy points, especially in a 2 quarterback league like we're in. If he's my second quarterback, I was more than happy. It didn't work out for me in either of the leagues I played in, and I was fine with that because only 3 times this year did Matthew Stafford go over 300 yards. Only once did he throw for 3 or more touchdowns. There were 4 games where he didn't even throw a touchdown. They all happened week 12 or later.
I'm sorry. Somehow made the playoffs with him.
3 of them were week 12 or later. I misread what I wrote here, but one of them was in week 9. So if you were trying to play down the stretch and you needed quarterback play and you had Matthew Stafford, you probably at that point were benching him for a Sam Darnold or a Josh Allen or somebody who wasn't even drafted. So look, Gronk is a great answer because of where he went. But I think for a lot of players out there who are a little more savvy and who rely on these deeper quarterbacks to kind of carry them so that they can build up at running back, at wide receiver, and be deeper there, not worry about making sure that they had Aaron Rodgers. This backfired on you this year if you went with Matthew Stafford. So I guess probably because of what we've come to expect of him, but just terribly unsatisfying season from him. And maybe too, we might be overlooking this, but maybe they are really transitioning to a team who wants to run the ball. So maybe we finally saw that this year.
I think especially when you consider people were drafting Matthew Stafford around the same time we were considering Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And it's like you just went, not only did you go wrong, you went drastically wrong. Like you turned a championship season into an 8th place finish if you went Stafford over Mahomes.
You made the Dumb and Dumber turn and went the total opposite way of Aspen.
Yeah. Right.
That's
I'm raising my hand because that's what I did. I thought about obviously from other than the obvious Le'Veon Bell, but depending on when you drafted, that might have not been an issue for you. But
no, to jump in, like I didn't say Lev because that was the cheating answer.
Yeah, that's what I said. Other than the obvious of that,
nobody got him in like the 3rd round and isn't that mad about it.
Exactly. So everybody drafted him pretty high and then got nothing from him. I thought about Gronk. I went Stafford because of the personal hit it took on my team. I know that he is not, the Lions are not in the same realm as the other teams in that division. I did not expect him to go to the playoffs, but Matthew Stafford is a guy who for his entire career has been 25 touchdowns, 4,000 yards. And you have to go back to the injury-shortened season of 2010 where he didn't throw for at least 4,200 yards and 24 touchdowns. He had one season of 24. Everyone else is above. So, and now this year, unless he absolutely goes nuts, he's going to have under 25 touchdowns and under 4,000 yards. He needs 489 yards just to get to 4,000, which would be 4,000 would be 200 less than any other season he's ever had. So to put a lot of stock in him, most people had him in that 11, 12, 13 range, maybe even top 10, depending on what publication you were going with. That's a huge disappointment because you're building your team at running back and receiver early and saying, okay, I'm going to take a late shot with a guy like Stafford, who I know is going to give me 4,025, and then you don't get that.
Yeah, I think to South's point, especially in multi-quarterback leagues, Rock, you were not alone in leaving drafts with Stafford as your 2 and people feeling like I'm loaded.
Yep.
Yeah. Because for him to be your 2, you were really good at the other spots, and you probably had like a Matt Ryan or, I guess he was actually probably pre-ranked below Stafford.
Yeah.
But, you had another, Carson Wentz or Andrew Luck. You had another one of those good quarterbacks. And you're like, God, Stafford's my 2. Like you said, I'm a lock for 4,200 yards and 25 touchdowns. And he has not even sniffed that.
Yeah. All right, give me – sorry, I skipped ahead here. With a full offseason to prepare, where does Lamar Jackson pre-rank at quarterback right now for you next year?
I think he's an interesting case, to be honest. And not only because of his unique skill set, where, is he Michael Vick? Is he Michael Vick with a better understanding of things? I don't know what he is. But, also looking at him with the second-year quarterbacks, we'll call them, because we're talking about next year. I don't even know where he ranks next to Sam Darnold. I mean, I think Baker Mayfield's the one. But where is Darnold, Jackson, and Allen? So I'm not sure. I answered your question for once. I actually answered your question.
Yes, I love it.
I think he's at the back end of QB2s. So probably around that 20 range, just because I don't know what to expect from him. You say a whole offseason to prepare, and that's good for him. But we're also talking about an offseason for defensive coordinators to learn how to deal with Lamar Jackson and how to bottle him in. And these guys have football brains we can't even sniff. And they know how to take away what you do best. So I think they'll bottle him up a little more. It's on him to become a better passer. I'm not even sure he's drafted in every league. He could be that Mahomes situation for sure, where he comes out and he's QB3 next year. And I won't be shocked because it could be 1,100 yards rushing. So I don't know, but I think pre-rank wise, we're going to see him around that 18, 19, 20 range.
I went a little bit higher. I went in like the 15 to 17 range. Not that I think he reminds me of, but like the taste that I have in my mouth of Tyrod Taylor from just last year, 2 years ago. These mobile quarterbacks who give you 50 yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown every once in a while, in standard leagues and even more so in leagues where you get 6 points for passing touchdowns. These guys give you so much more of a dynamic. I mean, we talk about all the time how his ceiling is 10 points of rushing. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, his floor is 10 points of rushing. So you're going to get, if he gives you 10 plus points of rushing and 10 plus points of receiving, we're looking at a guy who's, he doesn't have to throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns to give you 20 points a week. So I like him. I'm not in any way, shape, or form going to make him a QB1, but I'll have him he'll be a guy that I have my eye on and maybe take a little bit higher as a QB2, and kind of ride the wave and see where that goes. I'm also interested in seeing how they continue to develop the other receivers around him. Crabtree's getting up there in age. They don't have any young guys locked in per se. So, do they get guys to try and develop around him, or do they just roll out with this, basically spread offense, and see where it goes?
Yeah, look, obviously there's a lot to be desired from the passing game still. Only a couple weeks of sample size here, but he's only got 5 passing touchdowns, 3 interceptions, in basically like 6 weeks of being the guy. But in those 6 weeks, only one team has even kind of slowed him down, in the Chargers last week. 13 carries, 39 yards. He didn't get in the end zone as a runner. He did have a touchdown pass, but for what it seemed like they were trying to do last week, they were willing to let him throw a little bit more. He threw for 204 yards last week. In today's NFL, that's not a ton. I get that, but it was a glimpse at least into what he could potentially do in a game that really matters. Plus, they got a lead, and they kind of nursed that thing away. That's kind of what Baltimore has been doing. So I would expect that, to Rocco's point, they put some more playmakers around him, whether it's through the draft, through free agency. You've got to just open up some of those outside weapons for him a little bit. And until I see that somebody can kind of stop that rushing attack, again, they have a whole offseason to get ready for it, but I haven't really seen it to this point. So that's one of those I'll see it when I believe it kind of things. I mean, he went for 119, 71 in a touchdown, 75 in a touchdown, 67, 95. Like, this is a guy that to me is like your quarterback 14 next year, right in the middle of that, second tier of quarterbacks, but toward that front end, because, his floor is almost 80 yards and a touchdown on the ground every week. So, and that might change, but until I see that, I'm not convinced really. So, all right, let's talk here about a player who you'll be drafting higher than you would have expected in 2019 based on what you saw this year.
Yeah, I expected Nick Chubb to be a mid to late round pick for me. When I was thinking about the 2019 draft, kind of early in 2018 season, I thought I'd take him late and expect him to be a breakout candidate. And then they traded Carlos Hyde, And Chubb has been phenomenal. And not just him, but the Browns have been phenomenal on offense. So when you think about next year, it's going to be a crazy popular pick, especially the way Pittsburgh has underperformed lately. And Baltimore is going to be a question mark because we don't know how teams are going to respond, like we just talked about the Lamar Jackson. Cleveland is going to be a popular pick to win that division. And a lot of that's going to be, Baker's awesome, and the passing offense is going to be awesome, and Freddie Kitchens is a genius. But Nick Chubb's going to be a huge part of that. And he might be a quiet Frank Gore-ish part of that, but he's going to be a huge part of it. And I think what this season ruined for me is that I think Nick Chubb is going to be drafted as an RB2 next year instead of that kind of mid-round flyer, and I steal an RB2, you're going to have to draft him as one now. So he's going to be probably 6 or 7 rounds higher than I would have expected him to be. He's probably your 4th-round pick next year.
And I actually went with his college backfield mate. I went with Sony because I think that as what we're seeing right now is I don't think Brady's ready to walk away, but we're finally starting to see not the same level of Tom Brady. So if this team is going to, they're going to kind of have to go revert back to the way they were in the beginning of winning with a solid running game and checkdowns. And, I expect actually both White and Michelle to go much higher than I think anybody would have predicted at the beginning of this year. Probably after Chubb, but definitely not in flex running back situations. You're going to have to take them as probably low-end RB2 guys if you want them on your team, both of them. So
can you guys imagine what Aaron Jones is going to do when you get somebody who runs an offense from like this millennium in as your coach? Come on, like he's my pick right here. And here's the biggest reason why. Like since like week 8, he's scored in all but 2 games. One of those matchups was against Chicago last week. It was an ugly game. Obviously, he didn't have much opportunity. He got a little banged up as well. Another one was against New England, where all he did instead was just put up a boatload of yardage, on the ground and through the air. So here's a dual threat guy whose floor is 100 combined yards. He's a PPR threat who can take it to the house basically anytime he gets involved in the passing game. He's a guy who's a candidate to score a lot because still, even despite all of their problems, the Packers have been efficient in the red zone. Look at what Devontae Adams has still been able to do. And even with, some more targets going to other guys in that offense, Aaron Jones is still getting his. So I just think that when they get somebody who can kind of use a more modern offensive approach and use what Aaron Rodgers can give you and use what a dynamic dual threat back can give you, Aaron Jones is going to be a guy who's going maybe as high as, the beginning of the 3rd round next year. I think he's going to creep way up there. It's going to be a lot of opportunity for usage there with him, especially in leagues where you're getting points per receptions or half PPR. All right, let's talk about real quickly here. Tom Brady, is he a top 10 pre-rank at quarterback next season if he comes back and plays?
No.
There's no chance.
No way.
I said it kind of confidently. I don't think so. He just seems to have mostly lost his fantasy appeal. Like the Pats are sitting nicely at 10-5. That is below their standard, which is kind of shocking to say that like most fan bases at 10-5 would be pretty pumped. The Patriots are probably nervous. But like he's still a winner. He's still Tom, but he's just okay as a fantasy player at this point. I think the way I answered your question best is if I look at my teams, especially my 1 quarterback league teams, if Tom Brady's my guy, I'm not comfortable. He's reached that point where like if I draft him in a 1 quarterback league where he's my guy, I better also draft like QB 13 just in case. And that tells me I'm not going to pre-rank him top 10 because I'm not going to want him.
Yeah, I don't think he's a top 10 pre-rank based on what we've seen. They're really moving towards, hey, listen, Tom could still get it done, but he doesn't need to be the guy that's throwing 40 plus times. We've got a really good ground game, and let's just mix in Tom and what he can do on top of that. And they're still winning games doing that. I think you're seeing that, they're, as far as what they have on the outside, they've kind of taken a drop there a little bit. I know Edelman was injured at the beginning of the season. Gronk is slowing down a little bit. It's just not a great situation. But with all that said, am I going to be surprised if he's like the number 5 scoring quarterback next year? No, I mean, it's Tom. So, but let's just call it what it is.
I'm at the point that I would. I'm going to say, like, listen, nobody's been waiting for this time longer than I have. So, I mean, it's spoken with a little bit of a smile on my face. But, like, this, Tom is overcompensating at this point in his career for a lack of, I don't want to say talent around him, because I think the guys around him are still talent, but I don't think he can do it the same way. He's doing things that Tom Brady doesn't normally do. Throwing interceptions in Pittsburgh that he would never have thrown 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's just he's making mistakes. He's overcompensating, throwing balls he never throws. They are relying more on checkdowns and James White is like Kevin Falk 2.0. but better. I'll say that, but it's what they're doing. They're running the ball. They're checking down. They're not taking deep shots. I mean, listen, I understand the Josh Gordon experiment didn't really work out, but basically every time you threw a deep ball up to Josh Gordon, it was a touchdown, and they stopped doing it. Like, there's a reason why they stopped doing it. You know what I mean? And I think it's because the skills are starting to deteriorate, and we're going to only see that going forward more as a 40-plus-year-old man.
All right, last one here. We're going to skip down to the bottom of the list here just for the sake of time. Who's the clear-cut number 1 pre-rank wide receiver in 2019, in your opinion? And this is a tougher question.
There is no clear cut. That's my answer.
I think I disagree.
Wow.
I don't know. Maybe it's splitting hairs, and clear cut is like, there's 6 or 7 guys I could probably be talked into. But for me, if I'm on the clock and it's time to take the first receiver, it is going to be DeAndre Hopkins, and I will not second guess myself. I am well documented as the world's biggest Julio Jones fan. I love the guy. And having actually owned Antonio Brown this year in our league that I aforementioned won, I've learned to appreciate him as well. Adam Thielen is awesome. I mean, there's a lot of great wide receivers. But for me, when you combine the fact that DeAndre Hopkins catches literally everything thrown near him because he has 4X gloves, as was established before the Eagles game, I watched that, and they said he has 4X gloves.
He got hot dog fingers.
That's Calvin Johnson size. And you combine that with the fact that he's become one of the top 2 or 3 route runners in the league, and he's developed that crazy chemistry with an ascending quarterback in Deshaun Watson. I think, like, I'll quote Rocco, gun to my head here, DeAndre Hopkins will be my wide receiver 1 pre-rank next year. Again, if you tell me one of these other guys, I'm going to deal with that, and I'm not going to laugh at you. I'm not going to scoff at you. I'm not going to argue with you. For me, it's Hopkins. It's close, but it's Hopkins.
Yeah, and I'm only going to jump in because I agree with you. Look, with a week to go and a meaningful game for them, he's at 14, 25, and 11 touchdowns. And I think that we would all agree that it was a little bit of a slower-ish start this season, for him with Watson and coming back and stuff like that. And he's still at those numbers. So, I think it's time that, at least for me, like, I'm going to lay this out there. I was probably wrong on Deshaun Watson, not really buying in on him to this point. He's the truth. All right. He might be the Michael Jordan of quarterbacks. All right. I'm just being sarcastic with that, but he is the truth. He is a very good quarterback. He, elevates DeAndre Hopkins to even another level. So, look, maybe that's just because he's not playing with like Hoyer or Schaub or whoever they had there up until Watson got there. But this is a special combination that I think, if done right here, could be really good for a really long time. And I think that says a lot to kind of separate them. Matt Ryan has his inconsistencies for as great as Julio is. Aaron Rodgers has had his inconsistencies. And even despite that, Davante Adams is still going to like break every Packers receiving record this year. So again, you could flip a coin, but for me, it's DeAndre Hopkins.
I could be talked. I said right off the bat that it was not clear cut for me. I could be talked into probably 5 guys. I wouldn't even say more than that. I think there's 5 guys that I can be talked into. The guy that I picked for this argument is just because I think when you have chemistry with Aaron Rodgers, special things happen, and he's gonna keep getting the ball. You know what I mean? Like, he's got 111 targets right now. He's got 1,300 receiving yards. He's got 13 touchdowns. So less yards than Nook, but more touchdowns. Davante Adams to me is going to be the guy for next year that we see take an even bigger step. I legit think that, like South, you said, they're going to hire a coach that's going to be in an offense in this century, like that isn't archaic. Like, can you imagine if Aaron Rodgers drops back, all those times and Adams gets 120 looks?
That'd be crazy.
Like, to me, it's having a chemistry with the most elite quarterback still left in the league has to mean something.
The thing I like about Adams too, and he's definitely in my list of guys I would consider, he's the only player in half PPR to have 15 or more points every single week of this year.
Yeah.
And so there's that consistency factor of, and the other guys only missed once or twice. I mean, it's not like some crazy 20 points or 3 points thing with a guy like Hopkins, but there's that floor that when I'm going to when I'm going to spend a second-round pick on you or a third round at the very latest pick on you, I like the fact that I know Adams is going to give me 15 to God knows how much, 15 points. That's a bare floor, and I like that about Adams a lot.
Imagine ever being out on Davante Adams.
It's crazy.
I hate you so much.
Boy, how our loyal listeners will know how far you've come on Davante Adams.
Yes, that is true.
All right, let's look ahead a little bit here, and we may come back to this first one on the list if we have time, but more importantly, let's talk about the playoff picture. All right, so Week 17, the playoff drama in the AFC is still pretty solid because there's a lot that could be done here with seeding and how things play out. We've got basically a play-in game on Sunday Night Football this week. So play it out for me and tell me how you see the seeds falling in the AFC based on what you believe happens this weekend.
I kind of alluded to this the other week as like asking Deal and Ed Rocco for forgiveness for hating on the AFC for so long. And this week is even like on steroids how much better AFC football is than NFC football, just for the pure like how many things can happen aspect. But after playing it all out on NFLPlayoffPredictor.com, which is a great time, I ended up with what I think is a few surprises for me. I do have the Chiefs beating the Raiders for home field, but I think that game's going to be really, really close because the Raiders have been playing really tough football. So that puts the Chiefs at 1, the Chargers locked in at number 5. I think Houston's going to beat a Jags team that's completely quit on the season. And I actually have the Jets beating the Patriots in Gillette Stadium this week.
Wow.
I love the way the Jets have been playing. I'm not quite as crazy about the way New England's been playing. That locks up the first bye in the history of the Houston Texans. They'll be the 2 seed, and it puts New England at number 3. I do have them hosting then the number 6 seeded Colts, who I have beating the Titans in Tennessee this week. I just think they're the better team. That's kind of an easy one. And then as far as the last seed there, because I said the Chargers are the 5, finishing at 12-4, which is nuts. The NFC North, I think, is going to go to Pittsburgh in my world. They will beat the Bengals. I have the Browns continuing their hot streak, beating the Ravens in Baltimore. Second year in a row that the Baltimore Ravens fans watch at home as their team chokes away a playoff spot. The Browns will beat the Ravens. So I have Chiefs 1, Texans 2, Patriots 3. I have the Steelers at 4, Chargers 5, Colts at number 6.
I think it's so crazy how many possibilities there are, and how much we disagree. Not so much disagree, but I think the Jets play well. I still think they're not ready to beat the Patriots in New England. I mean, listen, I hope it happens. Don't get me wrong.
Well, yeah,
I hope Sam comes down and throws for 303 again like last weekend.
I thought of you the whole time. I believe that this is a changing of the guard game.
Oh, come on.
I'm not even pandering to Rocco here because you and I both know none of us care about Rocco's feelings. Like, you and I and all the listeners know, I would not say that just for him. I fully believe in my heart this is an AFC East changing of the guard. Tom gets his last division championship, but Sam Darnold gets the win and the confidence that the Jets are now the AFC East team.
From your lips to God's ears, my friend.
Dude, I just threw him off for the rest of the night.
I don't even have anything to add to that.
He's now taking Sam in the first round next year.
I'm taking Sam in the first round of every draft forever. Listen, I don't think they're there yet. You spoke such beautiful words to my ears, and I hope it happens, but I don't think they're there yet. I have the Chiefs 1 winning and taking the 1 seed. I have the Pats with the 2. Here's where things get tricky for me. I actually like the Colts to beat the Titans, and I like the Jaguars to put up a fight to kind of save Doug Marone's job at this point.
It sounds terrible.
I know it sounds terrible, but I this is like one of those things that happened. Like, I remember the Jets did it a couple of years back where they got a win in week 17 when no one thought they would and save Rex Ryan's job. I think that saves Doug Marone's job, and they go forward with a different quarterback in place and a different plan in place.
But can I jump in quick? I know we're on time, but like, what part of what they've been doing the last 5 or 6 weeks makes you think they want to save Doug Marone's job as the players?
Listen, crazier things have happened, is what I'm saying.
Like Jalen Ramsey, one of the best athletes in the league, reaching 3.2 miles per hour max on Derrick Henry's 99-yard run. Like, they quit on him.
And then him saying, "I'm only worried about myself."
Yeah, they've completely quit on this dude.
I think it happens.
All right, good. So, hey, we don't have to worry about the Jags.
So, Colts 3. I like the Steel. I agree.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I agree with what you said. I think the Steelers get the win. I think the Browns actually help the Steelers out and beat the Ravens, because I think more than not wanting to help the Steelers, the Browns want to show that they're here.
Like Baker said, we want to show people who we are.
Exactly. They are here. They want to be considered a team to beat in the NFC North next year. They no longer want to be a doorstep. And a quick way to do that is to come out and punch the Ravens in the mouth on Sunday, eliminate them from the playoffs. So I have the Chiefs 1, Pats 2, Colts 3, Steelers 4, Chargers 5, and the Texans wind up with the final playoff spot in the 6th seed, which I think makes for a great matchup of Texans going to Indy in the first round.
So here's how I have it playing out. I do believe the Chiefs win here, go to 12-4. They're the number 1 seed. I think the Pats win as well. I think it's a tighter game than they want, but I do think that they win and they hold on to that 2 seed, which is what the rest of the AFC was really hoping against. I've got Houston at the 3 seed at 11-5. I do believe that Baltimore wins this weekend. Look, for me, what it comes down to is that defense is so incredibly good. Like, you can't discount the fact that they just went out to LA and did their thing against one of the hottest quarterbacks in the league. I know Melvin Gordon was just kind of coming back off things. Keenan Allen was a little banged up or whatever, but like, they were one of the only people to really slow down Phillip Rivers to this point. So I think they'll have the right game plan in place here to kind of throw Baker Mayfield off just enough that they can get this done, which puts the Steelers out. And in my opinion, when the Steelers lose, we all win. So that's a good thing. I got the Chargers at the number 5 seed, and then they would go to Baltimore. And then I've got the Colts at the 6th seed, and they would go to Houston. And I think, interestingly enough, I think Houston would be in danger again of being a one and done there. So Chiefs 1, Patriots 2, Texans at 3, Baltimore at 4, Chargers wildcard 1, Colts wildcard 2. But I think Baltimore goes down to the wire.
I think the lock of the virtual lock of actually I think it is a lock. AFC South at AFC South for a wild card round will be pretty fun.
Yeah, I don't hate the Titans, but look, Marcus Mariota, like, he's been up and down all season. He's not going to be healthy. The Colts defense is really underrated for what they could do in terms of, making some plays. So you're going to throw somebody else in there, and they're not going to be as much of a threat as Mariota. The Colts have done a nice job of shutting down the run as well. It's just not in the cards for them right now. So, all right, same situation here, but in the NFC.
It's definitely a more clear road, I guess I would say. More clear path, whatever you want to say. The NFC is more decided. NFC, the Saints have it locked up already, number 1. In spite of the way they've been playing, I do think the Rams will beat San Francisco at home. They'll be the 2. That locks in Chicago as 3 and Dallas as 4, and Seattle's already locked in as 5. But I do think they beat the Cardinals and get to Dallas to play them in week 1. That leaves the old Minnesota versus Philadelphia thing. And I think for the second year in a row, the Philadelphia Eagles ruined the Minnesota Vikings season by beating Washington on the road. Washington seems to have kind of I don't love to say quit. They seem to have quit on the coaching staff based on, DJ Swearinger coming out and blasting the staff and then getting cut. It just doesn't seem like a place where they're ready to win a football game. And Philadelphia, having won 5 of the last 6, is really kind of building towards them. 4 of the last 5, and that would be 5 of the last 6. Maybe it's the fan in me, I don't know, but I do think that I believe Matt Nagy, where he came out today and said they're going to Minnesota to win a football game. And unless the Rams are beating the 49ers by like $1 billion at halftime, they're going to play their players. And Chicago's the better team this year. They just are. They don't have the on-paper name recognition, but they're playing better football than the Vikings. The Niners are playing great. I think the Niners will stay in the game against the Rams. The Bears will keep playing their starters, and they're going to beat Minnesota. That sets up Philadelphia at Chicago and Seattle at Dallas in the wild card round, with the Rams and Saints awaiting the winners.
I actually have basically the same exact thing, so I'll save you all of the formalities of going through it again. I think what it comes down to, honestly, San Francisco, for as rough of a season as they've had, they've played a lot of teams close. They lost a 5-point game to the Bears last week, so they're not going to just go away. They're a scrappy team. They fight. I think the Rams are still going to win, obviously, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is like a 10-point game at all. I just wouldn't. This is a situation where you probably have a limited or held back Todd Gurley. So, CJ Anderson showed himself well last week, but so did the 49ers rush defense against the Bears. So I don't think it's going to be like easy sledding by any means. I think that the Bears are a young team, and they really can't afford to kind of throttle down at all. Nope. I just don't think they can. They want to stay hot. They're going to be scoreboard watching and seeing that there's a legitimate chance for that bye. I just don't think it's going to happen for them. I think the Eagles win by like 10 or more in Washington. I think the Redskins cannot get off the field fast enough. And from what I've been reading, there's going to be a lot of changes to front office personnel and things in Washington. So I don't think there's like a whole lot of like, hey, let's fight for our guys kind of mentality right now in Washington. It's like, let's just get this over with. And again, I agree. I think the Bears are just a better team than the Vikings. I've soured a ton on Kirk Cousins. I really have. I just don't think that he is what they thought they were getting at this point. Could change, but he just has not been good in those big games.
And I'll make it 3 for 3. I have the same exact thing. My biggest thing that I want to say is the Bears are not like a seasoned vet team that's used to being in the playoffs every year. I don't think I agree with you, Seth. I don't think they want to take their foot off the throttle, which is why I think they get the win against the Vikings and the Eagles get in here. I just don't see them being a team that's going to take things lightly, especially because Matt Nagy comes from a certain pedigree of watching his former boss sit guys in week 17 and then come out flat and not ready. So I think that he's going to try and break that cycle and start his own traditions.
Man, how good would a Seahawks at Cowboys game be? That first, I mean, that's like two teams built really similarly, play real similarly. I feel like that'd be a sneaky, really great game.
Actually, I think both of those wild card games would be awesome in the NFC.
Yeah,
because what you just said, and then the defending champs clinging to their lives against an 11-5 or even 12-4 upstart Bears team. That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to park it here for now. We'll talk about, we were going to talk about some offensive rookie of the year and stuff like that, but we'll save that for our season recap kind of stuff here and get into that a little bit more in the next couple of weeks. We want to remind you, keep it locked into footballgoons.com all week. We always have good content dropping there throughout the week. Podcast will be there, obviously, basically right after the show here. So if you didn't catch us live, shame on you. You could have been part of the conversation, chatting along as we go here. But check out footballgoons.com. Also keep up with us on social media, facebook.com/footballgoons, at footballgoons on the Twitter here. As playoffs and stuff are coming in, we'll be a little more active on the account there. And then always on our YouTube channel, you can take part in the show live with us each and every week, be a part of the conversation. There's a whole separate, chat conversation that goes on during the show. So check us out if you want to be a part of that. We'll catch you guys next time.